And let's see. All right.
You're here?
Well, I can tell you no one's watching yet. Oh, and you want to do the phone or you want me to do the phone?
What's that?
The phone.
Do
Do you know
that, you guys ready?
do you have the special code?
It's yeah, I think I have it right here. I'm sorry, what's the code? I hope no one's seen the special code.
You mean
Hi, how are you?
the inside there?
Yeah, dang.
It's like the password posted on the monitor. Real secure.
Can you have some things printed out for me?
Is there one right in front of you there?
Oh, jeez.
It's the mask and glasses, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
Welcome and thank you for choosing freeconferencecall.com. You're helping people around the world communicate for free. Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign.
Is that Simon I saw?
If you are the host, press star now. Otherwise, please enter your PIN followed by the pound or hash. Thank you. You are the only participant in the conference.
Don't look at our passcode.
You want me to
Top secret.
call in for get rid of that music?
Oh, the music goes off when people call in.
Yeah.
Some of our people haven't, but I see the pictures you guys always go over town. And what was gonna happen? What's gonna happen on that side of
Me.
the backyard? Yeah, mute yourself.
Just did.
The
Just did.
backyard, so there's trees going around.
That way we don't have the music going on and, because
Did you just sign on, Jeff?
I did.
All right, I'll just
Turn the volume up.
Yeah, that music is like catalog now. Every time I hear it. Thanks.
Oh, and let me,
Music.
Ian sending. Oh, you have appending stuff.
Well, no, just the repetitive, all the same over, but, you know, the.
Hello, I'm
water
sitting
pressure
outside my
doesn't let
window
up.
before I'm the pastor at the Harbor Springs GOC.
Oh, cool.
I'm Susan.
I like to meet you something.
is this, my light isn't coming out at all on this. Why is
I
that?
talked to a few of the workers over there, they're very friendly, very nice, but yeah, we haven't got to meet you guys before.
We're awaiting furnitures delayed because of COVID, so.
Oh my God.
Two chairs.
Two chairs in the back.
Have you moved in yet?
We've been living here upstairs.
Have you been?
Andy, are you gonna be?
No,
on
you're
vacation?
not.
We could have.
Are you gonna take
No,
notes
I'm
again?
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm the one that parks the.
Are you
cabin
gonna
pastor
take notes
spot.
on
That's me.
Yeah, I'll take no cracker back there. Yeah,
You don't want to join us at the table?
what's that?
You don't want to join us at the table?
Oh, I'm okay.
You won't get any pizza and beer then. if you're sitting up here.
You want me to?
What time does that start?
Okay, do we want to call the meeting to order?
So, you know,
Done.
right on against the property line, but as long as the fence is there, I think we're okay. Okay, good. I know that the state's down. I didn't.
All right, Kristen, would you like to call the meeting to order?
I would. Can we do a roll call, Andy?
Yes. Simon,
Here.
Hines,
Here.
McDonald,
Here.
Leo,
Here.
and Morris.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, let's talk about the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January?
I'll make the motion to pass.
I can second that. Maddie made the motion and I seconded it. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right,
Motion passes.
let's see. The purpose of this hearing is to hear a variance request
from LTC Investment Company LLC for the property located at 316 East 3rd within the CBD zoning district. They are requesting a variance to construct a wooden deck. The proposed changes will be located approximately 8.5 feet from the rear yard's line. The zoning administrator has determined that the required rear yard setback is 20 feet pursuant to Article 12, Section 50.12028B and Section 50.1303 2, and that no structure may be enlarged or altered in any way which should increase its nonconformity. I'd like to open this up to the public. Bob, did you want to start and do a presentation and then we can talk
Sure.
to the,
I'd be glad to. I'll just do it from here.
okay.
Hey Jeff, do we need to make a motion to open the public hearing?
Let's have a motion to open the public hearing. How about that real quick?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
All right.
Bob, take it away.
Take it away. You guys have the drawings, so we don't have them to put up on the wall, do we? Yeah.
I've got it right up on the screen here.
Yep, yep.
It's on the screen there and the TV over there.
You got it. Oh, good. Okay, perfect. So let's see. Well, Todd bought this property and we remodeled it and restored it and added to it over the winter. And we needed to get a special use permit because it's a residence in a CBD, but it's pretty common in that neighborhood on Third Street. So we did that, and then we added to the house, but we purposely stayed within the zoning setbacks, so we didn't need any variances to do, to restore the house or remodel it. So that's what we did. Now, at the time, we were thinking more about the house, but we need to have an outside area for dining or for use, which is pretty common to everybody, I believe. It's not an unusual request. And we're proposing this deck. Now, in this zoning and in the code, we could put in the rear yard at grade, we could put a slab or a patio or something, okay? Which is an alternative. But there's 2 points we'd like to make. One, on a practical basis, in being good neighbors, or trying to be, is that one of our requirements was to keep all our water on our own property and not, or as much as we could, and not interfere, have our water go to other people's homes. So we got a drainage plan approved, and we've been using it for about a month now, and it seems to be working real well. But it is a small lot, so any square footage we can have to help our drainage, we're after, okay? So here's our main point here. It's a non-conforming lot because you've heard that argument before. Two, it's common for people to have outdoor dining and a place to be outside. So that's all reasonable. And the thing about having the elevated deck versus at grade is that if we put it at grade, it's going to be a non-porous surface, and we're just creating more hard surface. If we do a wooden deck or a PVC deck, then the water would be designed so that the water goes off the deck and drops down below it and is absorbed by the soils. And so we're not adding to our water issue that we have had to address in the first place. That's the most practical one. As far as the personal use of it is, being really the only outside access for even in the winter, like grilling or something, that's where they will do that type of cooking. And so we just think it'd be more convenient and safer to walk out of the house at the floor level rather than go down a flight of stairs, probably 3 treads and 4 rises or more. And so in a practical sense, it would be nicer to have it at the first floor, finished floor level. In order to do that, it's been designed so that it's within 30 inches of grade. What that means is we don't have to have any guardrails or anything around it, like which is determined by the building department. We don't need that sort of thing. So we're keeping the impact of it down just as much as we can. The size is 11 feet wide, and it's the length of the building, which is 20. That'll allow you a seating area and a dining area. And usually we make those kind of decks 12 feet, but we brought it back to 11 because it's a tight lot anyway. And they wanted some green space, and they've done a nice job of landscaping it. So all in all, that's our request. So we're just here to see which direction we're going to go.
Anybody have any
Oh, yeah,
questions?
I called Jeff today, and we canvassed our neighbors, okay? The church is on one side, AT&T buildings on the other. The church is gonna be doing some work on their parking lot, I understand, and kind of update some of their drainage. And then the other thing is the most sensitive neighbor we had is in the back, Jonathan DeWint. And he has a garage at his place that's a residence above, and it's right on his property line, which is a shared property line. And it's low because it's right at grade. So when we had that big storm, there was a little bit of water, but he's had an ongoing problem with that. And so our drainage plan resolved that. And actually we backed off. There's a set of privacy hedge, and we moved it almost 2 feet away from his building so he could have access to his building to maintain it, to paint it or whatever, to maintain it. And then what we did in that space is we put some drain stone, and we really improved his drainage situation that he had, that we were creating, but we were contributing to it somewhat, but not anymore. And then I'm gonna work with him and solve some other problems he has with gutters or whatever to just improve his property and the drainage situation. So he sent a letter, I know Jeff has it, in support of this, and we think he's key to it.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, you backed off the hedge onto this property and gave him access to the back of his garage on your property?
Correct.
So that he could.
Because the property line, I would say, was 3 or 4 inches from his garage. But now he has the space enough where he could put a ladder and access it. And, we're just not right on top of it. And that actually made our rear yard a bit smaller, not a great deal, but some. And one of the reasons we backed off the deck from 12 feet proposed initially to 11 was because of that. Because we're just trying to fit a lot of stuff in a small, non-conforming lot.
Right. That was very generous.
Anyone
He's a
have any questions for Bob?
Guess I have a question. Am I allowed to? No, I'm not allowed to address him. Am I allowed to address him?
Sure.
Yes, you
No.
may.
You can address and ask questions to the zoning board of appeals, and if they feel that question is pertinent, then they will ask the applicant.
Okay. If it is pertinent, I think that much of that drainage stone is on the church's parking lot property up in that top corner, which is going to be rebuilt by the city. When you look at that line, that filled in cup area is all full of drainage stone now. And I don't know what that will, yes, that whole encumbment was filled with drainage stone, much of which is on our property line. And the city has made an agreement to rebuild or to redo that parking lot. And I don't know if that will impact the drainage situation that he was just discussing. So I don't know if there's a question there that you would like to ask him regarding that drainage stone that's now into our part of our property, being removed by the city.
Oh,
I'll be happy to address that.
Please.
In our drainage plan, that stone is there temporarily right now for a practical solution of where you start it and stop it. But in our drainage plan, which I met with Luke from DPW, and the landscaper was David Hoffman from Lewis and Hoffman. And we did a drainage plan there, was my experience too. And that having that stone on that part, on their property was not part of our plan. It's actually just was a practical decision made by some of Hoffman's guys, like, why just put a 2-foot strip? Let's make it look good and whatever. The thing I think is, it might be a consideration. I don't know if you're gonna get enough space there to get another full parking spot.
That's all to be done by the city. Am I allowed to answer him? No, I'm.
Sure, we're just-
oh, sure,
Please.
yeah.
Oh, it's all to be decided by the city. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that there was another project to come. And that part, and by the way, I don't mind the stone being there right now, I don't, but I do mind if next year it gets moved as part of that parking lot, it becomes a question.
No, we're
That's all.
willing to move the stone, and the thought I've had is kind of trying to put together a reasonable plan use of the property, was that actually that stone being there might be to your advantage, because when they plow that driveway, that's right where they push all the snow.
That's good.
You know, so in the spring, when really is one of our more sensitive drainage seasons, with frost and ice and water and rain and all the things we can get, it might be a consideration to leave that, unless you could get another parking spot, but I don't think you can.
I have no desire to have it moved, I just wanted to be aware that that will potentially be under the arm of the city when they redo that.
Well, we
this coming
anticipated that, but 2 points is, one, it had nothing to do with our plan, and 3, we're willing to remove it if you deem.
So that was Lucas that you talked?
Lucas, yeah.
Lucas, okay, I just wanted to
But the
clarify.
way the process on a drainage plan is you come down to get a permit from Jeff, and then you get the professionals in there to see if they believe it's gonna work. And so we used Hoffman Nursery for grade, myself, and then Luke from the DPW.
Okay,
And then he reported to Jeff.
okay. All right, so,
I have a question.
go ahead, Tom.
The drawing up there, which comes off of the survey, is not accurate.
Okay.
Those two garages are tandem when they're actually side by side.
Well, I think,
Oh, let me explain that. There's, this doesn't show exactly, but this is an old.
you want, you want this
We'll
one?
go back to that very one, yeah. If you don't mind me being up here.
No, that's,
This right here is mislabeled. It's not a garage. This is a garage, okay? This is what we had for our special use permit. So this is, right now, there's a garage here and a garage there. This was a shed roof that we removed. It was an old shed. But we showed it on this plan for the purpose of our special use permit. So that's not there. This is the existing garage, which, you know, had to remain there to use it as a garage, or else it'd be non-conforming. And then we added a second car here. So they had two enclosed parking spots on site.
and that is shown on this sheet here. It is a little bit confusing because this has the first floor and the second floor. So if this portion down here, if we just kind of ignore that, he's got the garage that he talked about, the additional second garage, and then some living space to connect those together. And then they've drawn on the deck showing where that would be located there, to kind of show some of that. And to give a little bit of more background from what Bob has talked about, They did go to the planning commission for a special land use approval because this is within the central business district. The home was originally built and designed as a residential home, so they had the option through a special land use to bring it back and use it as a residential home. And the special land use gave them the ability to add on to that home and not have it be an existing nonconformity, which would have prevented them from doing that. So.
Sounds good. Any other questions for Jeff or for Bob right now?
I just don't see the hardship.
Oh, hold on, we'll get to that. Let's open this up to the public. Did the homeowners or Miss, did you want to speak?
I'm the pastor of the Harbor Springs United Methodist Church, Susan Hitz, and I was just here to gather information and to meet the owners. I do not have anything against the deck being built there as has been described to me.
Okay. Did you both want to speak?
Really, the only thing to add, other than the drainage plan, which we've now had a chance to prove out with the rains that we had at the lower deep, that's right in the spot where a raised deck would be. So we proved that it does work. We're allowed to do it. The only thing to add to that is we built the first floor ADA compliant for my parents, who will be staying there for a certain period of time with us. And for them in their 80s, having the ability to walk from the kitchen area right to the deck without having to go down a flight of steps is an important factor that we considered when we built the house, and then try to do the deck.
Thank you. Jeff, did you want to read that letter from?
Yeah, we received two pieces of correspondence. One was from Jonathan DeWint, who is the property owner to the south. Basically, he says in reference to the application for a variance regarding an elevated deck, he's submitting this letter in support of that request. He talks a little bit briefly about the potential for rainwater runoff, which is an issue that they have the drainage plan for, and that by doing the above ground deck would help with that situation. We have another letter from Bill Bugera, who has a duplex that he's built just down the street a little bit. It's very short, but basically he's stating that he feels that it's a reasonable request and that he's in support of it. That's what we've received via.
All right. Do I have a motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
I move that we close the public portion of the meeting.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's go into deliberation. Maddie, you're up.
I just looked up the things and I really don't see the fact of it. And to say that everybody around them has one, you can't go by that because there's the church and it doesn't really apply to them. They're not in a neighborhood where everybody has a deck. And you're adding to the non-conformity. Big time.
I did look at the residents on the other side of the AT&T building, and they do have something similar to what, that would be the
Not
closest
really.
neighbor. They have an
It goes
elevator.
straight down. There's steps,
Little porch back there.
a very low porch. It's not a big deck or anything, because they have the driveway right there.
The alley behind you're talking about.
It's difficult to see, but I did pull up an aerial photograph here. This is the subject property. Obviously, this picture is before some of the construction work that they've been doing there. So this is the church property with their parking lot. And then this would be that other property to the east. It's difficult to tell with the pixelation here of what's there, but that's what we have available at this time.
John?
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay.
I think the information is great.
Correct.
The house pretty much 360 degrees around is outside of the setbacks on all four sides. And this increases the amount of setback that it infringes on. Now, I walked around back there and with the deck there and the shrubs there, I think we have to think about what the purpose of the setback is. And that's partially for safety of that house. If it catches on fire, or if the house behind it catches on fire, will it spread or will it not spread? My concern is, can firefighters get back through there with the proper equipment? If that 8 feet with the shrubs there becomes 4 feet or 6 feet, that's the purpose of a setback, to give that space. And that the whole house, the whole structure there is outside of the setbacks.
Kim, do you have any further comments?
I guess I do have a question, probably for Jeff. If they were to build a lower deck that's just a couple of inches off, is that still considered like flush? I have something like that, and it still allows drainage, but it's not the elevated.
So
Does it
for
have to be a hardscape?
zoning purposes, anything that's built above the natural grade of property is considered a structure and needs to meet the zoning requirements. So if they did a wooden deck that was like a patio that was flush with the grade of the property, then they would be able to do that, and there would be no zoning concerns. That's difficult to do, and I think doing that out of wood, Bob would probably tell you that there are issues with, the wood rotting and whatnot. So typically when people do something flush with the grade, it's out of a material that lasts longer, like stone or brick or something like that.
Like the AZAC type thing that doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the concern, is because they're bringing this up above the natural grade, it's considered a structure and therefore, must meet the setbacks.
I personally have no problem with this plan, only because I've lived the drainage on Main Street, and I know exactly what they're talking about. My parents had water in their basement constantly and had to do drains. I had that listing on Main Street that they had to do massive amount of work on trying to figure out the water problems. This is in the CBD, so, the setbacks are, quite substantially smaller than normal residential. Would you agree?
Well, if I can touch on that for a bit. So when they went to the Planning Commission and asked for special land use approval, right? And I've got here pulled up the Section 8 of the Central Business District, which is the special land use request for a single family home. One of the requirements of that, and this was part of the discussion at the Planning Commission, was any addition to the building is subject to, or shall be subject to, the B1 setbacks. So there are setbacks, and if we go to the B1 section, I can pull up what those are, but basically it's listed on the notice of what those are. But so for commercial structures, there is no setback requirement. But for other types of structures, specifically special land uses, single family home, they did feel that a setback was necessary.
Well, and just to throw my other 2 cents in, I do think that having an outdoor, deck of some sort for, it is typical for the neighborhood, for across the street, for anything residential, it's pretty typical.
Across the street, though, is this different zoning district, and we should.
Well, and they're against the bluff as well, so you're dealing with, having to, yeah, I understand that, but I still think it's typical for, most homes to have a deck. So, is anyone comfortable making a motion at this point, or should we go through, we should probably go through the matrix once we get a motion on the table.
I would make a motion based on the information that's been presented in our discussion that we approve this request.
I second that. Do you want to go through the finding of fact with me, John?
Yeah, I think it would be very,
Okay. Based on the following evidence, which is part of the record, the board finds that there are unique characteristics of the subject land and not to general characteristics of the surrounding land. I'd say specific evidence includes the water drainage issues.
But the water drainage is not the setback issue. The setback issue is the whole house is outside of the setback, inside the setback.
but this particular question is about which part, the board finds that there are unique characteristics of the subject land.
Well, if you're
And in my
looking at
mind-
unique characteristics, everything else is out of the setback, and this is making it even worse.
But it's,
Well, it is pre-zoning. This was built pre-zoning.
that's where I
Well-
said it was.
Let's actually touch on that a little bit because there is a significant portion of an addition that's been done to this property by the applicants. The second garage and the living space that connects the garage to the living space. That is a recent addition to this property by the current applicant.
Which
So,
was approved, though.
because it met the zoning requirements. But that is something that should be taken into consideration of when you get to the question of, is this a self-created problem or not?
But the additions that have been made to the building, which were permitted and approved, do not materially change this particular request. If the additional garage had not been put in there, and the desire to have a deck would still exist, to me, it's not directly impactful.
It would have provided them with an alternative location to have that deck that would have met the zoning requirements.
Okay.
You know, and one other thing is, you're looking at a deck, which, yes, everyone else has, but we're looking at the setback here, which is safety and health issue and law, okay? And whether the neighbors have a deck or not should not be the issue.
So your concern is about access to the backyard in case of emergency.
That's what setbacks are set up for.
But in this particular case, because of the proximity to an open space next door with the parking lot, there's ample access to the property.
Can't get behind, might not be able to get behind with the equipment because there's only about 4 or 5 feet.
They would have access to the backs of the parking lot and access to the deck in the rear of the house.
Not directly, only from the parking lot.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, both parking lots on either side.
Well, and then why do we have a rear setback? Because of that issue, to make sure that there's access, to, in case there's an emergency.
Okay, as a rule, yes, we're talking about this specific property in this specific location. I believe my opinion is there's ample access to the rear of the property.
Well, when the state of Michigan and the fire marshal set up these setbacks, that was not their decision. They put a setback in there based on what they felt they were comfortable with.
And for new construction on a lot that provides enough space to do that, I would agree with that. But this house, when was this house built? Does anybody know?
18.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on to number 2. Based on the following evidence, which is part of the record, the board finds that the strict application of the zoning code to the applicant's property would be unfair or produce an unjust result. And I have to go back to, if we have drainage problems because they're going to put, stone and affect the drainage in that area over, patio area, that's going to negatively affect the neighbors. Not so much the 2 commercial on either side, the church and and the, Ameritech building or whatever, but it's going to directly affect, the DeWitt's property. So I think that it is unfair, not only for the applicant, but for the adjacent homeowner, that has a dwelling right behind that property line. I think that's an issue. So I would say still drainage on this one. John, do you have?
Well, in the application of the existing code, which was enacted when?
1976.
So the code that was enacted in 1976 on a house on a small lot that was built in the 1800s, to me is preventing the current owners from having equal enjoyment of their property. So to me, that is a direct hardship to the owners of the property.
Okay,
Didn't Bob say that the Dwins put the garage there more recently? I thought I heard him say that.
I don't know. And my guess, and this is just a guess, but based on the drawing that we're looking at, that garage is within inches of the property line. So I can't believe that that's true. We've had, we've had zoning at least since 1976, potentially even before that. And so we have rear yard setbacks, and we would not have permitted that garage to be built that close to the property line. In most districts, the smallest or the closest you can be is 5 feet, and I think it would be even larger in this area. So I can't believe that would have been something done more recently.
all right. Based on the following evidence, which is part of the record, the board finds that strict compliance with the zoning code restrictions would prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted use, or would render conformity with the zoning code restrictions unnecessarily burdensome, because
Same argument as I offered up for the previous one.
equal enjoyment.
In the 1976 code against an 1800 construction in small lots.
And I would also argue equal enjoyment for the older house guests. The next one, based on the following evidence, which is part of the record, the board finds that there are no reasonable alternatives to granting a variance.
There is one alternative, and that is a slab, concrete slab.
Correct.
Or,
smaller.
yeah, or there's a lot of people who enjoy their backyards without a deck.
That's true. I would argue that it's, the lot size and what's already existing doesn't lend itself to a better spot to have a deck or a patio, because it's right off it is tucked into the structure there along the east side. Okay, based on the following evidence, which is part of the record, the board finds that variance can be granted without substantial injury to adjacent properties in the neighborhood in which the property is located. I would say with the pastor being here and the letters that we've received, I'm not seeing that anyone is vocalizing that they're being harmed by this project. And based on the following evidence, which is part of the record, the board finds that any practical difficulty, does not find that any practical difficulty was self-created.
That's kind of my sticking point. I went into this feeling like, yes, I thought this was a great thing, and I heard the water drainage and so forth, but based on what Jeff said, having an additional garage, they could have used that for the deck, so I do feel like it was self-created. Not every place on that street, and most of them don't have a 2-car garage. And if they foregone that, then they would have had a place for the deck. So I'm thinking changing the way I was leaning and leaning towards.
Anything else, Scott, on this one? The practical difficulty was self-created. Do you both think that it was?
Yes.
Okay. Fred?
Yeah.
John?
Well, I'm struggling with it. It depends on perspective, given the history of the structure of the lot size and how it's situated. You know, the owners didn't create the location of the house on the property.
They did
But
not.
technically, if the additional garage and living space had not been created, you could have had, I guess, a deck between the garage and the house. That one's happened.
And then not had an additional, or not have the garage be attached, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
How much space was in between there originally? Yeah.
Let's see if we can zoom in on this a little bit more. So it looks like the width of the lot is between approximately 62 feet. We have a side yard setback on both sides of 10 feet. So just looking at the dimension of the side property line to that side setback line here, if that's 10, it looks like this distance here is more than that. I would, without scaling this off, I would say we're looking at somewhere between maybe 15 to 20 feet here. We can look at the other pages of the plan here to
But
see.
that is sandwiched between the original garage and the house structure. The original house structure is what you're saying. So there was a little bit of green space in there. Okay.
Well, if there was enough to add another garage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see it right there. Well, I'm struggling with this too, to make this work. I think that there was an alternative, but now I think that the practical difficulty is the drainage issue, which we do not want to exacerbate, and that is not really self-created unless they go ahead and put, an 11 by whatever, the slabs of cement there. That would be a self-created problem. So I think in this situation, you're actually being proactive to not create a problem. And so I do see your point. They had green space between the buildings. And now they're coming before us asking for, not a huge amount of space, not a huge variance, not an egregious amount of change in the zoning variance with their request. I think the practical difficulty is really the water. And that's and the safety of people accessing a patio, a lower patio. So that's just kind of my take on it.
I'm gonna say the drainage problem was there before. They've had the drainage problem. Before the deck was there, it went into DeWitt's garage, okay? So they've done something to work on that. But that is a totally different situation. Has nothing to do with the setback request.
The drainage issue, however, has gone up exponentially as Lake Michigan has risen. So whereas some of the Main Street houses had a little water, they've had a lot more. My husband's shop has had a tremendous amount of water. And it's coming up from the water table. So
It's
the,
also coming from the springs that we have about every 10 feet.
oh, sure.
When you take a heavy rod, poke it down someplace, water will come up.
Well, yeah, absolutely, but I mean, I'm saying that the water problems that we're having downtown seem to be, hopefully getting to a peak.
But
And,
this is a drainage problem. It's a slope in the back.
well, it's coming off the bluff and then off Third Street. The church has the sloping, parking lot. It's all pooling there, until it can kind of escape. That's probably why the city would really love to put in probably another drain in your parking lot, just to try and mitigate this problem that
Well,
we have downtown.
the curbs that they put in the last, since 76, make a big difference too. That there used to not be any curbs on Judd Street, Judd Hill, or on Arbor, or on any of those streets around. But now they're able to direct it to the shade drain or wherever to have it run off more properly. We did have the monsoons that we had a month ago. Those are unusual, but they really showed, where water goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And water's directed now where if you're standing in the existing entrance of Irish Boat Shop, water just shoots down Judd Hill, Judd Street, and past Bay Street.
I have a question.
Mhm.
When you were landscaping and stuff, have those two railroad ties always been there on top of each other?
No.
So with raising the level of the backyard, sure, it's gonna go into his garage.
Well, there is a zoning requirement that they have to prevent that.
Okay.
So
they
regardless
can
of,
prevent it.
regardless of whether they get approval or don't get approval or whatever they decide to do on the site, they have to make every measure to stop rainwater runoff from leaving their property.
Okay, so they've taken care of that.
Well, at this point, we'll see how, spring looks and whatnot, but they've submitted a plan that Lucas has reviewed, and we feel that currently will mitigate the rainwater runoff issues.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, oh,
Well,
Oh, can I speak at all?
oh, yes, you
Oh,
can.
sure.
Go right ahead.
Those ties that we put in actually almost created like a pool in our backyard, which was our intention, was to capture our water. So by now doing the patio, we're gonna fill the pool, which, then that water's gonna go somewhere else. That's the whole point of the deck, is that it's all part of the whole plan. So that was the first part of it, and we proved that after we flooded Jonathan's yard twice, from our property to his, we started that plan, got those ties in, captured our water, and now we need to hold the water on our property by having as much exposed land as possible. My fear is that if we can't do something to keep our land open and we cover it, then we're pushing that water back off, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay,
Can I address something?
Sure, Bob.
To Jeff's point about, when we put this design together and asked for the special use permit, the point that we could have used the space where we put the garage and connected the garages to the house could have been a deck. At that time, having a deck in the backyard is in compliance with the zoning code. Okay. But we're not asking for anything special there. It's there. We can do that at grade. What we're asking for is to raise it up 30 inches, okay? And actually by doing that, and I'm going over all stuff we've already talked about, but we're actually creating more space within the code to keep our water and take care of our own water on our own site. by needing to follow the code and be practical about what you build, is that we have to have a hard surface that's not permeable at grade. And, you know, we can do the whole backyard in concrete and be within, but we're gonna create a huge drainage problem. And we didn't anticipate this situation until this spring, when we started thinking about the outside, because we knew we could have a deck. And then it kind of became more, well, what's the practical thing here is to elevate it for the two reasons we put forward. One is the drainage, probably the biggest, and the other is the use. What would you rather do, walk out from a house in the winter or any time and walk out with no steps, or be forced to go down 4 or 5 steps, whatever, 3, 4, or 5. And so I think our request is reasonable, and there's always an argument about the code, which was mostly adopted in '76 here in town, was for improvement of the whole community, but it created issues, and that's what our real hardship is, because this is a non-conforming lot. But the people that wrote the code in their wisdom figured a way out to get around unusual situations, and that was the ZBA, and that's what we're doing tonight.
Okay,
So to me, it's like, what is the most practical use of this property? We have the right to do it, but which direction do we go?
all right, thanks, Bob. Okay, we do have a motion on the table. John set forth the motion to approve, and I seconded it. So, Andy, do you want to do a roll call on that?
I certainly will.
Okay.
Simon?
Oh, I can't understand. You said Simons, right?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No.
Hines?
No,
McDonald?
Yes.
Morris?
No.
And Leo?
Yes.
Motion fails.
Okay. At this point, you basically have made the determination that there was not a practical difficulty with the site, and the motion to approve it was not successful.
Okay.
So there's,
We agree that it was self-created, not that there was a practical difficulty with the site.
well, I mean,
Very specific.
yeah, basically that,
I
you know,
believe that there are always practical difficulties with properties that were built in the 1800s with the code that was put into place in '76.
I guess I phrased that wrong and maybe should have said a sufficient practical difficulty to result in the approval of a variance.
Planning commission agreed with me.
Okay,
So, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
with a board this small, you, with no further business, you can, as the chair, you can adjourn the meeting.
I adjourn the meeting.
You're
Andy,
adjourned.
do you want my notes on this?
I have notes.
Okay.
Yep, thank you very much, Doc. Appreciate it.